Hello YouTube, Dave here again. Today I'm going to be flipping through the Pathfinder 2nd Edition Lost Omens Character Guide. This is a book that I've actually been looking forward to for quite a while now, and now that I've had it for a few days, it's again time to give just some of my early thoughts on it. So before I do that though, we'll just take a look at the back here. You can see some nice artwork again on the back. There's a lot of nice art in this book overall. But it says, Allies and Ancestries. An adventurer's life can be difficult, but long journeys and heavy burdens are easier when you have company. This guide to the world of Pathfinder presents the people and organizations that can help or hinder heroes like you. The Lost Omens Character Guide features new heritages and feats for existing ancestries, as well as 3 brand new ancestries for unusual heroes forging a place for themselves in an uncertain age. Join 5 of Galarian's most influential organizations, fight alongside the rank-and-file members provided in these pages, or clash against them in pursuit of your own passions and goals. The retail price for this book is $34.99 US, and the Canadian price I think was about $10 to $13 more, so I think $45 to $48 seems like the fair price, at least. Again, I had this sent to me by the good folks at Paizo for the purposes of this review, and as with all the products that they've sent me, they are not encouraging me to say anything in particular in their reviews. They're not fishing for nothing but positive comments. Everything that I state in these videos are my own opinions. So, with that in mind, let's just go ahead and start flipping through the book here. So we have our title page and our table of contents, and again I like the way that they lay the table of contents out with all the artwork and stuff like that thrown in there as well. And then we have what is probably my favorite piece of art in the entire book right here. So you have this scene with a group of heroes or adventurers sitting around a table. These are your major ancestries from the core rule book, which is what we're dealing with here in this first section of the book. So what we have is we have like you see the human here seems absolutely disgusted looking at the goblin, and the goblin is eating all like these bugs, one of which is crawling across the table. The gnome is kind of curious about it. You see them looking through like a magnifying glass, while the halfling steals some of the gnome's food, and then you have the dwarf offering an alcoholic beverage, I have to assume, to an elf who is politely trying to turn it down. So I just love that art. It's just so awesome. I love it. Anyway, the first section of the book, like I said here, is the ancestries from the core rulebook. So starting off with humans. We have all the different sort of ethnicities for the humans, so the different regions and cultures that we have for the human ancestries throughout the Pathfinder world, and it goes into some information about like their appearances and some of their maybe a little bit of like their traditions or things along those lines. Like for example, the Gurundi have like face tattoos and stuff like that. That's a big part of their culture. There's also new ancestry or new heritages available for each of the ancestries included. For the human, we just have the Wintertouched human, but other ancestries will have more. There's also images along the sides of each of these, just showing different what different ethnicities or heritages or ancestry, what the different types of like humans in this case would look like. And then we have our ancestry feats. A lot of the ancestry feats in this book are labeled under uncommon, whereas the ones in the core rulebook are all labeled as common. And with uncommon, there's usually some sort of requirement, so they have like an access listing here. So, for example, you may have to be of a certain nationality or have a certain heritage or things along those lines that you have to meet in order to gain the feat in the first place. So, again, it just adds a little bit of flavor, and it's a way of, again, sort of rewarding or completing the flavor of having a human from some of these different nations. So, again, really cool stuff there. And then we get into like the half-elves and half-orcs. So we got the half-elves here, and some of the different appearances that we can get for them. and then we have the actual feats over here. So we've got the Ancestry feats for half-elves. There's only a couple of them. But again, the like half-elves and half-orcs, even though they don't have a ton of feats of their own necessarily to choose from, they also have access to all of the human feats for their Ancestry feats as well. So it's, again, they only get a couple here, but that's in addition to potentially, being able to take any of the other ones in here based off of their nationality, ethnicity, or but just ones from the core rulebook as well. And then we get the dwarves, and again, just some really nice artwork. I actually really like that picture of the dwarf there. And something that we don't see a ton of anymore, but we actually have some artwork here of a bearded female dwarf. And it does actually mention that some of the dwarven females do have beards based off of the type of dwarf that you are. The new heritages involved here are the Anvil Dwarf, the Elemental Heart Dwarf, and then we have the Oathkeeper dwarf, along with the different Ancestry feats here as well. Then we get into elves, and again it just sort of goes along those same lines. Gnomes, including bleachlings, so those gnomes with debatable fortune to survive the bleaching awaken as bleachlings, pale reflections of their former selves, drained of color and strong emotion. Despite the fearful stigma that most gnomes have for bleachlings, the latter seem utterly at peace with their new condition. If anything, bleachlings are attuned to nature in a way that exceeds their brethren's natural affinity, speaking to animals with ease and reaching magical equilibrium with their surroundings. And then a little bit later on, we actually have, I actually kind of like this one as well, because he looks like he's trying to do something and all the woodland creatures are just really starting to annoy him, which is, again, just cool little artwork. But then we have the actual bleachling there, so again, just cool stuff. And then we got our goblins. So we have tailed goblins and treadweller goblins. So the tailed goblins literally look like, well, they look like monkeys, which is kind of interesting. And then they have feats specific to them as well. And we got our halflings. The halflings are, all right, but I don't think they're going to be able to make something as cool as the halfling, the hillock halfling, I think it is, the one that regains extra hit points if they eat a snack while someone treats their wounds or when they rest. So, but still, again, it's cool stuff here. Again, Ancestry feats and everything. And then we get into our new Ancestries. We have the Hobgoblins, which are, well, the Hobgoblins, so basically a larger version of the Goblin race. Then we have the Leshies, which is like this plant-type creature that has different abilities based off of whether they're like based off fungus or vines or leaves or things like that. And then you've got, of course, the Lizard Folk. And Lizard Folk have always been one of my favorite races. Most of my fantasy campaigns have had adventures involving lizard folk at some point or another. I just absolutely love using them. But first we have the Hobgoblins here themselves, and this is sort of how they look. Again, with the Pathfinder goblins and hobgoblins, and even the bugbears, since they're all part of like the goblinoid race, they do try to make them look more similar than maybe other RPGs, and some people have mixed feelings about it. I don't mind it at all. I think it's a kind of a cool way of tying them all together and making it really clear that they are part of the same overall classification of races, I guess you could say. So Hobgoblins they get 8 hit points. They're size medium, they have 25-foot speed. The ability boosts are to Constitution, Intelligence, and of course a free one. They do get a minus to Wisdom. And then they have like Dark Vision as well as speaking Common and Goblin, and then extra races or extra languages based off of their intelligence and then their traits and everything. So Hobgoblins, again, pretty cool. They have a whole bunch of heritages listed here. So there's like the Elfbane ones, which kind of resist certain types of magic. Runt Boss Hobgoblins, which are hobgoblins that are smaller than regular hobgoblins, but able to still be like bigger than a traditional goblin, so they've been able to boss them around. So they get like an ability where if they succeed on a check to coerce a goblin, a success is considered a critical success instead, and if you critically fail, it's just considered a failure. So that's kind of cool. And yeah, Smoke Worker Hobgoblin, War March Hobgoblin, and then the Warden Bred Hobgoblin for ones that have lived underground. And then of course we got all of our different Ancestry feats here as well. And then we've got the Leshies. And these things are just, you know, I'm sort of on the fence with them. I think that they're really cool. I like the designs. And one of them I absolutely adore. So this is sort of like your leaf Leshie here. So the heritages are fungus, leaf, vine, or gourd. And the reason that I love the gourd one is my favorite. And the reason that I love the gourd Leshie the most is because the head, like the gourd on their head, doesn't actually contain like anything. All the like brain or whatever makes them function is contained within the body, so they can actually just store stuff inside the gourd on their head, or where their head is. And I just think that that's just kind of cool that they could just pull out, like, you know, they can store small items. It's up to 1 bulk. So like if you have a light item, for example, you could have up to 10 of them just stored inside of the hollowed out gourd, and it has like the facial features. The fungus one kind of looks like the Stuff of Nightmares, but again, it's a really, really nice design. So just kind of cool stuff there. And if you want me to do a video on these in more detail, let me know and I'd be willing to do that as well. And then of course we have our lizard folk. We have cliff scale lizard folk that are used to like climbing mountains or used to like sheer things like that. So they kind of have like the they're adapted to climbing. The frilled ones, which they have like, it's kind of like the whatever the dinosaur was on Jurassic Park that had like the frills come out. You basically sort of do that. Sandstalker lizard folk are ones that are used to harsh environments like the desert. Unseen lizard folk have the ability to sort of adapt the coloration of their scales, kind of like a chameleon. And then you have the wetlander lizard folk, which is sort of your traditional swamp dwelling one. They also get 8 hit points. Their ability score boosts are strength and wisdom. Their flaw is intelligence. They have claws they can use as a weapon attack, as well as aquatic adaptation. And I did forget to go over the Leshies stuff, so let's just go back to them for a second here. So they also get 8 hit points, so that's kind of the standard for all the races in here. They're considered size small, where the other ones are considered medium. They also have 25 feet speed, so I think that's the same for all of the other races in here. Constitution and Wisdom are their boosts as well as a free one. They also have Intelligence as a flaw, I guess where they're just sort of a plant creature. Their languages are Common and Sylvan. They get low light vision, and then they have plant nourishment. So you gain nourishment in the same way that plants or fungi that match your body type normally do. Through some combination of photosynthesis, absorbing materials with your roots, or scavenging decaying matter, you typically do not need to pay for food. If you normally rely on photosynthesis and go without sunlight for a week, you begin to starve. You can derive nourishment from specially formulated bottles of sunlight instead of natural sunlight, but these bottles cost 10 times as much as standard rations, or 40 silver pieces. So they actually can like bottle sunlight, which is just again kind of cool. So we got our lizard folk, and then we have some listings of other ancestries. And I was kind of hoping that they might also include some of these in here as well. You have like the Tenku, which are like rat people, but the ones that I really want to see were things like the Aasimar and the Tiefling or the Changeling. I'm not huge on cat folk, I'm gonna be honest. But it would have been nice to have seen maybe a few more of those in there. But again, these are all things that can be added through future supplements as well. So hopefully that's maybe a look into the future of some new ancestries that can be introduced. And then we go into our organizations. There's also a listing of some ones that are not included necessarily in here, but other ones with a little basic information to know about. So we start with the Firebrands, and it gives information about their, like, how the organization works, as well as you know, just basically how to play them. And you have like the options here as well. So these are essentially feats that you can get. These don't appear to be devotion feats like the archetypes. So there's just other feats that you can take as long as you're part of the organization, which is pretty cool. And then we have the archetype later on. And then we got, of course, the Hell Knights, which play at least a minor role in the Age of Ashes storyline that I'm actually currently in the process of running. And we have the Order of the Rack, Order of the Chain, and then we have the Order of the Nail, which is the one that's at least mentioned in the Age of Ashes story. And then you have the Order of the God Claw, which seems kind of intimidating. So these, the Hell Knights basically worship Osmodeus. Not necessarily as, you know, for him being evil or anything, just as much as it is their respect of the fact that he represents absolute law. So, for example, the NPC in the Age of Ashes storyline that's part of the Hell Knights is actually lawful neutral. So it's not like they're not all necessarily evil. Oops, and I think I glossed over. Yeah, you have the Hell Knight. So you have the Hell Knight and the Hell Knight signifier, looks like, for the archetypes that you can possibly play there. Then we have the Knights of Lastwall, and this is the artwork that was on the back cover as well. Again, just some cool stuff there. And then the archetypes, of course, along with the other feats that you can take just for being part of the class. This one I'm not huge on, just because that's like they just have a giant spider servant, and I don't appreciate that. I'm not a big fan of spiders. Although I will say, as much as I'm not a big fan of spiders, they did make this one look kind of adorable. But it's still, you know, just a gross, yucky spider. At least in my opinion. We also have mentions of some of the other races here. So we have like the Catfolk, for example, which again would have been nice if they would have included that Ancestry in here as well for people that are into that sort of thing. But again, that's something that can very well come in another book. And then of course we have the Pathfinder Society with all the information that we have along with them as well. And I actually really like that artwork as well. And then we have the agent feats, you have the other feats, the regular feats, and then you have the archetypes for the society. So you have the Scroll Master, Spell Master, and Sword Master, which is pretty cool. And then we have our NPC Gallery, which just has NPCs from each of the previously listed organizations. And then theme templates, so I guess these are changes that you can make to some of the individuals that are in here, so some of the NPCs or some of the monsters, I guess not monsters, but some of the NPCs based off of their level. So, for example, if you wanted to make an Aldori Sword Lord, at first level or higher, remove the creature's melee weapons, if any, from its items, and then add the dueling sword, which was in the Lost Omens World Guide. The creature's items with a strike at the same you add the dueling sword to the creature's items with the same strike bonus as its best melee strike. And if they're 4th level or higher, in addition to what you do for 1st level, add intimidation to their skills and gain the Duelist Edge free action. So these are basically just changes that you make based on the level of the NPC that you're using. And then we just have our I was combining glossary and index. We have our glossary and index at the back, and then our open gaming license information, as well as an advertisement for the bestiary. And that was the Pathfinder Lost Omens character guide. So that was just flipping through the book. I really, really like this book. And this is something that I think works really well in combination with the World Guide as well. But I do appreciate the fact that they sort of split the the game master information away from the player information that's in the character guide. So I think that sort of works well, in that if you're a player and you want to have access to some new feats or new abilities, you don't necessarily have to buy the actual campaign setting. You can just buy the character guide for that campaign setting. So I sort of appreciate the fact that they did that. So it makes sense to me from that perspective. And by breaking this out into a separate book, it's more likely that the players are going to want to buy it, versus having it all just in one combined campaign setting, that players may not be overly interested in the rest of it. They just want the information that pertains to them. So I see why they did it, and I can appreciate, the reasons behind that. The information contained within, I think, is pretty solid all around, and it just keeps giving you more and more options to add to your characters, which goes, again, even further into having a system where you could have the entire group playing the same basic ancestry, and no two of them being the same, like through the combination of feats, class options, and archetypes and everything else. There's just so much variety in this book. The only, like I said, minor nitpick that I have is that while it does include 3 very interesting and cool new ancestries, I especially love the Gourd, Leshy, and I've always loved lizard folk. A hobgoblin, I can see why people might want that in there as well, but it's kind of a shame that there's a section that refers to other ancestries, but doesn't give us any of those either, even if it was just a simplified version of them. And I think that's probably something that would be difficult maybe to do with Pathfinder, where ancestry feats are such a big part of the way that the game is designed. But it would have been nice to have seen some of those, maybe instead of just 3, maybe having 5 to 6 new ones. And I think that would have been really, really cool. But at the same time, the 3 that were in here, I think, are very, very solid. And with the other ones that they tease, that's just, something that can be easily added into things like a future book and maybe another player's guide, or something along the lines of the Adventure Path books that might have a new ancestry or something thrown in based off of if they're important to that storyline or not. So there's definitely room to add those organically through future products. So while it's something that I wish they kind of did, at the same time I acknowledge that it seems like kind of a minor nitpick based off of all of the stuff, the new abilities that are added in here. And of course, I can't understate just how much I absolutely love this image right here. I just absolutely love it. So anyway, if you are playing a Pathfinder 2nd edition game and you want to have maybe some new unique options that separate your character from ones that are based solely on the core rulebook, then this is a great pickup. And I think for most players it's going to be a pretty easy purchase to make. So again, I do highly recommend checking it out. Anyway, let me know in the comments below if any of you have made characters using either the new races or ancestries available in here, or using some of the new heritages or the ancestry feats. Let me know in the comments below how you've managed to use this book, if you have so far in your Pathfinder 2nd edition games. Once again, thank you very much to Paizo for sending me this book for the purposes of looking through it and reviewing it. And again, I give this a pretty solid recommendation. Thank you guys very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time. Take care.